Hey, this is Teresa right here from Pin Traffic Power, and I have a special guest today. His name is Dai Manuel, and I think you're going to love this. We are talking today about the 8 tips for avoiding indecision and overthinking. I don't know about you, but I'm guilty of both of these, and I know all of you have been guilty at one point in time in your life of some of these things. And what is really fascinating that's going to be revealed is the quality of your decisions affects your life. And we're going to take it a step further. The quality of your decisions affects your business, which in turn affects your life when you drill right down to it of asking yourself, what do I want? What is it that I really want? And really drill it down further. So before we get started, go ahead and subscribe to Pin Traffic Power right here on YouTube. And welcome our guest, Dai Manuel. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, what you like to help people with, and we'll go from there.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Teresa. It's an honor to be here, connecting with your community, your tribe of amazing people and people with entrepreneurial ambitions, I know for myself, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years in many different capacities, but the titles that I'm most proud of is father of two incredible kids. My teenage daughters are now soon to be 15 and 17. And as well, I've been dating my wife for about 20 years now. And those are the things I'm most proud of. But on the day to day, what do I do? Well, I help people facilitate. I'm a facilitator of massive transformations, both in people's lives, but also in their businesses. And I do this through lots of different great ways, coaching and mentorship predominantly, as well as providing people with systems, really systems to align their passion and purpose with, to ultimately create the results they want both in life and business.
Perfect. That's awesome. And I love that you say about what is most valuable to you, your family. I love how you always are intentional in saying dating your wife.
Ah, yes.
Keep doing that. Keep doing that. That's
Yeah. Oh, trust
awesome.
me, as they say, happy wife, happy everything.
Very, very true. And it'll affect the quality of your life, right?
Oh, in so many ways. But all for the good, all for the good.
All right. Well, why don't you introduce to us your 8 tips for avoiding a decision and overthinking? Let's just
Sure.
dive right in a lot of this.
Well, I think, that if we just address the main issue at hand, I think a lot of us struggle with this concept of time management. And especially as it relates to the FOMO of life, right? That fear of missing out. And so we often will say yes to things very readily, very quickly, without really thinking about how does this actually benefit or impact my life or my business, or both. Many of us have lifestyle businesses. What's that mean? Well, it's businesses we've purposely created to support the life we most want to be living. And I know that sometimes we get quite worried that we'll make the wrong decision, or we're given too many decisions, and then we're faced with something called decision fatigue, where we're just, oh, I can't make a decision because what if I choose the wrong one? So I just won't make any. you know and then procrastination sets in, or we find other things that we can do that really isn't moving us forward in life and business right now, or is it things to really distract ourselves from some of the stresses or anxiety about having to make a decision? So really, when I've narrowed it down here, is there's 8 things to try to keep front of mind when you're encountering this struggle, or this stress, if you will, of trying to make the decision, but also the best decision for you. And so, yeah, we can dive right into these 8 things if you like, or what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you're an entrepreneur as well, Teresa, and
Yes.
we only have 24 hours a day, like everybody does. Like, what do you struggle with most when it comes to time?
Yes. Um, Prioritizing.
I like
Sometimes we prioritize what should not be prioritized.
that. Yeah, well said.
I would say not sometimes, but most of the time, you know,
Right.
most of the time. And I've gotten to the point where I really ask myself these questions of, is that really going to move the needle?
Mm,
What are the most important things that will make the biggest impact? Kind of going back to the Pareto principle of the 80-20. A lot of the
yeah.
stuff that we do is busyness, and it doesn't really do anything except make us very tired and exhausted. We get very exhausted, you know. So, what is it that really moves the needle? And is there other stuff that I could either table or let go of completely? Because it
Mm,
just doesn't seem to be making the biggest impact or making the biggest difference in the business and in my overall life.
mm. I like how you said that, especially the idea of the needle, moving the needle forward. I often refer to that as well, in a little bit different language, but the same concept. And I think that's important because when you fully own the power of decision making in your life, choice, you start to realize that the choices I make will be followed up typically with an action. And that action will have a direct correlation to the direction I go, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and is it getting me closer to where I want to be, or is it actually taking me further away,
Mm-hmm.
sidetracking me? And so that's really cool how you said that moving the needle forward. I think that's beautifully stated. So, yeah, I mean, do you want to jump right in? Should we just jump
Yeah,
into
let's do it.
these 8 things? Sure.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, the first one, and I think this is the one that we hear this a lot. Like we hear it a lot. But as much as we hear it all the time, I don't know if a lot of us take the time to actually sit with it, reflect on it, internalize it, and really truly own it. But it's the idea of knowing your purpose, right? Like it's knowing your purpose. What does that mean? Well, Simon Sinek, he's got an amazing TED talk. He wrote a book called Start with Why. It's this emotional connection to the motivations and inspirations that move us forward, that drive us. The Japanese call it your ikigai, the reason you get up in the morning. It's a very powerful force, and it is more inspiration than motivation. Motivation is usually something that is external. It's a motive for doing something, maybe a reward or achieving a certain result. But inspiration is that motivation from within, and that is powerful if you can learn to channel that. So if you can get really clear on your purpose and why you're doing the things that you're doing, especially as like an overall or overarching vision, it's going to make decision making much clearer because now the window shrinks. So you're going to eliminate choices, but you'll also be able to shine a flashlight, or more appropriately, a spotlight on the areas that are in alignment with your reasons for doing what you do. So it makes it easier to make a decision.
Yes, I think that's perfect. And one of the things that I hear most often with a lot of people in the self help space,
Mm-hmm.
self development, I read a lot of books.
Yeah.
And a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people who know me know that I'm constantly reading books. I'm constantly trying to learn. And you know, because you got to work on yourself,
Mm.
you are your business. Whatever happens to you is what happens to the business. So if you get better, if you improve, your business improves. There's a direct correlation there. And one of the things that I hear often is in order to help you find your purpose, and you can, you know, say whether or not you agree with this or if you have a better way, is to keep asking the why questions.
Mm.
You know, because oftentimes we don't go deep enough and we kind of stay on the surface. You know, we say, why? Because I want to make X amount of dollars within a certain amount of time. Well, why is that important? Why do you want to do that? You know, and you just keep drilling down with every answer that you give, and you just keep asking why. And what you get down to is the real core of
Mm.
what it is that you really want. But sometimes we don't know until we start asking ourselves, you know, deeper questions and go a little bit deeper within ourselves. What do you think? What is a great way for everyone to know how to figure out what their purpose is?
I think the why question, as you said it, is very appropriate because it is a drilling. And if you have a hard time doing that yourself, this is where coaches, mentors, even just a really good friend that cares about you, and your business enough to continuously probe you until you both feel that you've gotten to what it really is. I think that's a wonderful way to do it. Also, I like the dreaming aspect of just letting our creativity flow, in particular as it relates to, well, why do I do what I do? Like what is that internal motivation? But more importantly, what am I working towards? Like if money was not in the picture, so take money out of the
Mhm.
equation, you take basically you had unlimited ability to do whatever you want right now, right? Like there's no roadblocks. What would that thing be? What would you choose to do day in, day out with the rest of your life? because once you start to answer that question, it's like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. This is what I feel drawn to do. There's a wonderful book and actually an interview series called The Power of Myth. And a gentleman by the name of Joseph Campbell wrote this book. And he was a university professor, and he did a lot of studies around myth, but particularly stories and storytelling and some of these arcs that are in stories. He's the one that coined the term the hero's journey.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's this, yeah. So this hero's journey is remarkable because you see every Hollywood movie out there.
Hmm.
When you read some of his studies, you're like, it ruins everything because now you can see the plot lines like before they happen and you understand what's happening. But every one of us are living our hero's journey. And at some point in our life, we feel challenged to change something, to do something. And it's usually something that's going to push us outside of our comfort zone because it involves learning something new, learning to think about something differently, actually doing something to create a different response to what we're accustomed to. But we go on this journey. And then while we're on this journey, we get a lot of challenges. They just happen. But every time we're challenged, we change. We change either for the better or maybe not for the better, but we change. We come out of that evolved as a different person than we were when we first felt called to the challenge or to the journey or to the adventure. And the neat thing is once we come out of that period of extreme stress or duress, or where we felt like, oh my goodness, I felt called to do this, but wow, it was hard. But you come out of it. You're alive. You've survived, and you can start to thrive again. But a lot of us feel called to come back to where we started and now share and help with other people go through similar challenges. And it's this amazing cycle that we see. And I think that really ties in nicely to that sense of purpose, because sometimes it may be our purpose, but there's often a much greater impact it has on the world around us. Do you know what I mean? Like there's
Hmm.
deep sense back. I look at what you do for so many entrepreneurs. There's clearly a deep purpose there. You went and accomplished something wonderful for yourself and your own business. And then you went through these changes and now you're like, wow, I've got something that I can give back to others to help them with this. And it's this fulfillment of that sense of purpose. But it might have just started with an idea or something in your life that you wanted to change.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And everyone needs a Yoda.
Yeah.
And at some point,
Very
you're
true.
talking about
Very
the
true.
hero's journey.
Yeah.
I always call
Yeah.
that you got to have a Yoda in your life.
Yeah.
I have to have multiple Yodas. And you can
Love
get
it.
them for yourself in all different ways. It can be hiring a coach, it can be
Mm.
courses that you're taking, it can be books that you're reading. You've got to keep learning because there is no end to it. You've got to have all these Yodas that
Yes.
are helping you with your path. But then the other part of that I also teach as well when we're referencing the hero's journey is that you need to be the Yoda for someone else, and those
Mm.
are your customers. That's your
Mhm.
audience, and how that's important to help them with their journey and to
That's
help
right.
lead them to the path to success as well. So while we're also looking for our own path for success, oftentimes that comes in the form of helping someone else.
Mm.
And the more that we help someone else, the more that we help ourselves. So it's so interesting how our lives very much overlap and they intertwine, and we're very relational people. That's how we're designed. We're not designed to sit in our own corner and have no contact with the rest of the world. We very much need to be in contact with the rest of the world, and it's this intricate fabrication that is woven of how we all are able to relate to each other, how we're all able to help each other, and
Mm.
there's a real purpose in that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I mean, yeah, purpose is a powerful word. It's a very powerful word, and I find it's only a few degrees separated from passion, right? And I find that the more sure we are of our purpose, we tend to find that our passions start to align with that as well. And we'll get into that a little bit later. We'll talk about values and value systems and how that plays into helping us make better decisions and having more confidence about the decisions. But, sort of going from this purpose standpoint, if people really get clear on that, it's going to help them take action confidently. Because now that it's like, okay, well, this is in alignment with my purpose. As you said, it's moving the needle closer forward to where I want to be or where I want to
Yes.
get to. So it just becomes this nice guiding principle that you can start to rely on to literally help you. And and what you have to realize, this sort of feeds into number two, and it's this idea of being logical. And full disclosure, human beings are emotional. But I'll go one step further, and I'll say we're all emotional human beings. you know,
Hmm.
Emotions are part of who we are. It's just there's no fans or buts. I mean, we can try to be as Socratic as possible and try to really separate emotions from our motivations and our inspirations and the reasons that we do what we do. But let's be honest, emotions are part of that. But on the flip side, there's logic as well. And if you look at most of your decisions, I always say this to people, like if you look at your last massive decision you made, I mean a big decision. I'm not talking about like what you watched on Netflix or what you had for dinner. I'm like the last really big, impactful decision you made, was it based on emotions? My guess is that it probably was. And just because most of our most challenging decisions are influenced by our emotional state that we find ourselves, whether it be heightened based on stress or anxiety, or maybe dealing with a financial challenge. And so we might sometimes go from a place of fear or desperation or fear of lack, rather than the flip side, where we actually maybe try to look at the situation logically and figure out, well, what actually makes the best sense given the situation I'm in right now, and weighing out the options. And so this idea of being logical when it comes to making decisions is something that is important to try to lock onto when we can.
Yes, I think it's important to always gather the facts first because
Mm,
oftentimes we skew things in our heads.
that's right.
That's part of what we do as humans is we have these very complex brains,
Yes.
and we can use them in very powerful ways, even to the point where we hinder ourselves, and we're holding ourselves back. There's um, being that Yoda for many people, as I coach a lot of
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
every year. Oftentimes, I see a person, and their reaction is their first instinct is to point fingers and blame
Mm,
everyone
hmm.
and everything else around them for why they're not seeing instant success,
Hmm.
fast success. What's happening is it's very much an emotional reaction
That's right.
that's happening there. And oftentimes, in order for me to, they refer to me often as a person who talks them down off the cliff, or talks them down off the ledge.
Hmm.
Part of that is doing what you're saying is, let's look at the facts here. And what I am trying to do is bring them into their logical part of their brain, and let's look at the numbers here. Let's look at the statistics. Let's look at what's actually happening. And
Hmm.
then when you can move from the space of high emotion, where you're not going to get much accomplished when you're in that state of mind, to okay, now let's look at it objectively so that we can know how to best move forward
Yeah.
and know what is giving you the results. So once we can figure that out of what's working well for you, we can capitalize on that. And it's really hard. You can't be in this real high emotional state and be able to see those kinds of things. You have to do what you're saying is be willing to take a step down for a moment from that place, and be able to look at everything logically, and
Mm,
you're going to make your better decisions there as you're a little bit more clear minded.
yeah. Absolutely. Something to A little exercise people can even do is imagine that it's not your choice, your question or decision that's being required right now, but envision it like it's somebody else's. And how would you advise that person to come to a conclusion or come to a decision? So it'd be like that sort of that third party. Because often when someone else looks at the problem, this is why coaching is so beneficial, is that they're not emotionally attached to the problem, what got it to that situation, to be to have that question even asked, or change to be proposed. And so there's often that disconnect, which allows them to be more logical in how they they figure into the process. I always equate this to like when I wrote my book. Like editors are amazing, but I remember them cutting so much from my book, which I felt was like essential to the story, right? And yet they cut it out because they're not emotionally attached to it. They just want to make a great book. They want to have a tight narrative, like they want to make it better. And so sometimes it's nice to have that third party that's not as emotionally
Yes.
invested
Mm-hmm.
in not only the question or the change, but nor the outcomes. And that can help a lot. So just envision yourself one step removed. And if you were advising a friend on the same thing that you were considering, how would you respond? How would you coach or mentor them through that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty nice exercise to distance yourself from the emotions.
Awesome. Well, let's go on to number three.
Plan your day the night before. This it really comes down to, I know time management is one of those, well, it feels very elusive, right? Like we all feel that we struggle with time management. And that's why I try to reframe it as commitment management. We can manage commitments. We can also manage blocks of time or blocks of commitments. And I'd like to encourage people, especially when it comes to lifestyle and lifestyle optimization, well, block the things that are most important to your well-being first. Get them on the calendar first, because if you don't prioritize your well-being, nobody else will for you. I'm just letting you know a little secret here. No one else will care about your health as much as you should be caring about your health. And because it's ultimately up to us to make it either great or not. It's based on our decisions or our indecision. And so in this situation, when you plan the night before, even like certain commitments that you have, because it's moving that needle forward again, right? Stick to them. Even though you wake up the next morning, you may feel less motivated, or all of a sudden, something else comes up, or you find out a friend messages you saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. You want to grab a coffee?" But no, respect the commitments you've made, and follow through with those. And I think we give ourselves too much leniency at times, especially as entrepreneurs, because we often make our own schedules. So we will be very quick to say, "Oh, I'll change this. Maybe I'll do that one later now." And we don't respect the commitment as if it was somebody else that we were being committed to, because it's just to ourselves. So we can let ourselves off the hook sometimes. So this idea of planning and sticking to the plan, it's going to help you, because all of a sudden you get these last minute things that pop up. It's like, well, no, you got to stay committed to the commitments you made. and it will help you make that decision rather than delay or procrastinate. You stay true to what needs to be done to move you forward today.
I think that's really important because entrepreneurs, they suffer with shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
When they become, an entrepreneur, they see opportunity everywhere, and most people don't see that. They say the opposite. They complain a lot of, I'm stuck, I'm limited on how much money I can make or what I can do to make money. They see
Mm,
these limits. Entrepreneurs, they begin to open their eyes and they start to see that there's unlimited amounts of opportunity out there. But
yeah.
the problem is they try to take on too many things at once and never really get to that point of making a commitment to just one at a time and really focus on it, really build it up, make it a success before you try to take on something else. Instead, they keep seeing the opportunity, which is amazing, but it's really hard to say, that's a great opportunity. Let's
Mm,
look at it, let's outweigh it. Maybe I'll table it for later, and
yeah.
let's keep working on this right now.
Great.
um, so that's important as well, and also, putting your own health and your own well-being first. Oftentimes entrepreneurs don't do that. They would
Mm,
rather take on some other opportunity to make more money rather than take it on themselves,
yeah.
of trying to help themselves become better. Therefore everything else around them will improve as well. So we end up with a lot of brokenness with trying to do too many things and none of it's done well, and we're left broken ourselves and totally burnt out. Um,
Absolutely.
so I think that this is really, really important that, planning your day the night before, thinking about what is important to you, making a commitment to yourself, and really sticking to all of your commitments is very, very valuable.
And on that note, I was just thinking, because and you've probably read these books already, but there's two in particular, well, three that actually come to mind. But this idea of willpower and sticking
Mm-hmm.
to the things that we know we want to be doing or ought to be doing, and then we sometimes don't.
Mm-hmm.
Willpower comes into question. It's not an unlimited resource. We have only so much of it every day. And so if you
Right.
think about the things that challenge you most, that require the most amount of willpower, I usually recommend schedule those in first. Brian Tracy in his book Eat the Frog talks about this. He says, if eating a frog was the hardest thing you got to do in a day, just do it first thing in the morning. That way, you can do all the other stuff that you really enjoy for the rest of the day. It will be a lot easier for you to do that. And so it's recognizing the things that by doing them, even though they might be the most challenging for us to follow through on, we know by doing it, it's going to affect us emotionally and psychologically because we're going to get a nice boost. We're going to feel satisfied that we've done something productive that we needed to do. Nice dopamine hit. It's good. and, but also on top of that, it's moving that needle forward. Right. And so the other book is Essentialism by Greg McKeown, which is really about helping us decipher between things that are essential versus non-essential in business and in life, and being able to answer questions very quickly based on what category it falls in. No more gray area. There's no more maybes, or someday or sometime. It's like yes or no. And that clarity will help a lot when it comes to also planning your day. Because now it's like, okay, well, these things I was going to plan in, are these like absolutes, or are they kind of like maybe shoulda, woulda, coulda?
Mm.
So you eliminate some of that lack of confidence, that lack of assuredness that you're making the right decision at the right time.
Mm.
So that's sort of all put into that.
Yeah, and prioritizing your, making priority the most important task. The one that you are wanting to procrastinate on the worst is probably the one that you need to do first.
Yes. Oh
That
man.
is just at a critical point in the morning time when you have most of your energy,
Yeah.
because you just had a night's rest. You've got the majority of your energy to tackle it, and once you
Mm-hmm.
do, and you take action on it, you're going to feel more motivated to be able to do it again and again and again the next few days and to accomplish it. So a lot of people they wait to take action until they feel motivation,
Right.
when it's actually the opposite. You need to take action and then you'll feel motivation, um,
Definitely.
of how to
Well,
do that. Well, let's go on
yeah.
to the next one that you have here.
Know your values. So,
Yeah.
so these things that the way I often explain core values or help people connect with that concept is a core value or a value, something that you deem to be extremely important to you. It's like the no ifs, ands, or buts. It becomes this non-negotiable aspect that drives us. It often aligns with our purpose as well and our passions. It's really right down to the foundational core of who we are. These important things, these things that we value, these belief systems. And I often say, if I was to ask you today to list off the things that are your core values, and then we didn't speak to each other for 10 years, then we met again, and I was to ask you the same question, we would probably find that the majority of those core values are still the same. They tend not to change that much because we believe them to be absolutes, non-negotiables, important factors that help us actually get clearer on the actions we do and the life that we're living. And so if you're not clear on what your values are, that's a good place to start, is start to get clarity around what's important to you. Like as an example earlier, you brought up the fact that I prioritize family and my wife, my relationships with family based on, I present that, people ask me, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, first and foremost, I'm a dad, but I'm also been dating my wife for 20 years. Like these are my values. I want
Yeah.
to lead with those first because that's actually what matters to me most. I'll prioritize that over a paycheck any day. And so family is one of my values. And how this helps me make better decisions is, I get presented with some amazing opportunities sometimes, some amazing speaking opportunities around the world, and wonderful. But some of these take a lot of commitment from a time and resource standpoint out of my life.
Yes.
It might mean time away from my family. My daughter just finished her first week as a lead in a play, and I wanted to be there for that. Like, because of that, and knowing that that was going to happen during that week, I did consciously say no to some opportunities. Why? Because of that value. It made it really easy for me to say to those individuals, you know what? I really appreciate the opportunity, but this week I've prioritized commitments with my family. If it works to reconnect on another time, let me know. I'm open to that. And fortunately, everybody understood. They all came back and said, no problem. Let's circle back in 2 weeks and we'll set up something then. Awesome. I find that people don't argue with values because they too often share a lot of the similar values that we share. It's common ground. And they wouldn't appreciate if we came in and asked them to then, not stay true to their values and make compromises that put those values into a challenging situation. Nobody wants that, you know? And so there's that certain underlying mutual respect. So that's one of the ones. Get clear on what your values are.
Yes. And many things I see is people with FOMO, fear of missing out.
Hmm.
They think if I don't say yes right now, right away, I'm going to lose the opportunity. The opportunity is
Yes.
gone forever. And that just isn't true. The opportunity is still there. It's just that maybe now is just not the right time,
Mhm.
and you can pick it up later. And if that person really wants you to be a part of this, they will be understanding,
Mhm.
just like you said, and you won't really truly miss the opportunity ever. If they can't be understanding, then it's probably not the best opportunity to pursue because it's not really an opportunity any longer. It's not going
That's
to
right.
support what you really want down to your deep core of who you are,
Mhm.
and what kind of life do you want? What do you want in your life? Those are the questions um, that you're asking with that. That's perfect. It's perfect.
Cool.
Know your values.
Next one, give yourself a deadline, right? Usually, a decision that is good, and when I say good, you just know is right. You can make those very quickly, right? Like if you think about it, like you've probably been presented with some pretty cool things in the past, or you've had opportunities to work with some pretty amazing people, and it probably just happened right away. Like you just knew right away this is the right decision to make. Awesome. If there's any sort of inkling where you're not ready to fully commit right away, give yourself a deadline at least on when you'll make a decision by. And I'm not saying, 3, 4 weeks. I think a lot of us are very wishy-washy when we make commitments to get following up with people. It's one of my pet peeves is just like you say you're going to follow up, well, because you often meet people, you go to networking events, like, oh yeah, well, let's make sure we get together for coffee. Okay, when? It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's my question is when. Let's pull out our phones, let's look at our account, let's figure out a time right now. I mean, just do it, get it done with, and that way we know what's happening. Otherwise, it just life happens. It
Mm-hmm.
happens. It's busy. It doesn't get any less busier. We fill our days, and so give yourself a deadline to actually make an action, whether it's to decline with great respect and thanks and gratitude, or to take advantage of whatever the opportunity or the action is that's going to move you forward, and just make the decision. And it's okay if it's a no. There's nothing wrong with that. No is a complete sentence. you know, you do not have to justify your no's, people. And I'm the worst for that because I used to always. Maybe it's the Canadian in me, I don't know, but I feel like I always got to apologize. Even when I say no, I got to say sorry and then justify why I'm saying no and go into this long explanation. You know what? No,
Yeah.
it's a sentence, right? So that's just something on that. What are your thoughts on that, Teresa?
Yeah. You never have to justify yourself. You never do. You can say no, and that's it. Um, you don't have to explain. You don't, nothing. Just move on. Save your energy for what's most important.
Totally. Oh man, I totally agree with that. But it's funny, like I think a lot of us, and I'm sure there's people listening to this or watching this right now, and they're like nodding, like, "Oh yeah, for sure." And and I'm that way too. I'm like listening to all these things, and just so you all know, like these are all wonderful things to try to remember. But we have a lot of years of conditioning that dictate a lot of our actions, lots of our thought patterns, our belief systems. Overriding those, it takes concerted effort. Like you actually have to do something about it and apply some energy, and you have to be aware. And so I'm not saying these things are easy to do. Simple in concept, but far from easy. It still takes action, right? And of actually being mindful enough to say, oh, is this aligned with my values? Oh, is this in alignment with my purpose? When's my deadline on making this decision? Like there's a certain level of awareness that's happening. So just full disclosure, I still struggle with this stuff too. Okay, and but all we're looking to do is try to lock onto one thing, practice that one thing, internalize it, and then you'll start to see it happens more naturally, which is nice. Oh, and
Perfect.
sorry, that was my lead into the next one, which is
Yes. Go right
know
ahead.
that know that if you're indecisive, any option is probably acceptable.
Mm.
What this basically means is you may get a few options at times. You can probably very quickly, and this is where you start to use logic and some of the other things we talked about, like your values as well as your purpose and even the deadline aspect, like, but you can probably narrow it down to a yes or a no. And the yes, I'm going to guess, you're going to opt for the best option, right? And if that's what it comes down to, like if it's a this, or that, you have to pick one of the three. Well, go with the one that's the best option right then and there. Don't delay on it. And that's I personally like that. Like if I'm given choices, I know sometimes too many choices is not a great thing because it can cause delay, and that's where this step comes in. It's like just pick the best option for you right now and be okay with that decision. Don't dwell on it. Move forward. you know, and because it leads into the next one, and we'll talk about that after we flip on this one. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always now I ask myself, do I feel good about that?
Oh, good. I like
I
that.
start to
That's good
tap in a
intuition.
little bit of
Yeah.
the feeling or what's in the gut.
Hmm.
What is my internal navigational system telling me? What am I feeling? If I'm not feeling, good about it, it's a no.
I like that. I mean, trusting your intuition is powerful, and I think some of us just don't trust our intuition enough. We forget, and it's. I like how you talked about trusting your gut. I think that's
Mm.
best way to put it. I mean, the best way to phrase it up. So, yeah, no, thank you. This kind of leads into the next one. Our second last one, which is consider the reason for the hesitation. So, when you're presented with choices and you have to make a decision, but you find yourself hesitating to take action and make a decision to follow through on, sit with that. Like, take a second, make a commitment. You'll get back to them in a certain time, right? Like, so I'll often say, listen, I'm going to need a couple of days to think on this, and we'll get back to you within 2 business days. Is that okay with you? And I ask for permission if that's okay. Almost inevitably, it's always an okay. But now I have to wonder, well, why couldn't I just say yes right then and there? What is it about this that I'm hesitating on?
Mm.
Why am I hesitating? And I think this, Teresa, is right on
Yeah.
point with what you just shared about the instinct piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason why you hesitated. Figure out why. you know, is it fear because of maybe a fear of failure, fear of the unknown? That needs to be challenged, right? Work through that. Don't let fear dictate your decision. Be aware of, why am I fearful of this? That could be one of the hesitations. But on the flip side, it might not be that. Maybe it's just, I'm worried about overcommitting. Is this really in alignment with my purpose and my values? Is this
Mm-hmm.
really something that's going to move that needle forward? What's my gut telling me on this? So I think everything that we said, you can sort of see how these all progressively work into each other. But you can often rely back and forth from each of these tips or strategies because they're all working on the same thing, which is helping you gain clarity and make a decision.
Excellent. Perfect. And so, after your reason for hesitation and thinking about it a little bit further, what is your last one? Number eight. Drum roll. Last one. This is a biggie. This is a big
This
one.
is, and I think it is the
Huge.
most important one, but it's often the hardest one, especially as entrepreneurs and those that find ourselves as very much type A personalities that want to go, 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 do everything perfect. You have to let go of perfection.
Yeah,
Forget about even trying to be perfect. Change your mantra. No more perfection, only progression.
that's
Okay?
right.
Like, make that the mantra. Make that your motto to live by. If you're always progressing, awesome. You're moving forward. You're taking action. You're accomplishing things. But if you're constantly striving for perfection, I hate to be the one to tell you this, you're never going to get there. Like, it will never be perfect. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you stop aiming for that progression, and you can have an ideal or a vision or a dream that you're building to, and that's great. It guides your efforts. But if you're striving to create the perfect image or the perfect solution or result, ooh, it's just not that cut and dry. And you're going to create a lot of stress, in times a lot of mental duress, like actual stress. And this is where procrastination often comes in at the worst of times, because we start to say, well, if I can't do it perfectly, why am I doing it at all? And we'll figure out ways of sort of self-sabotaging. There's a book called The Big Leap, by Gay Hendricks, and he talks about this idea of trying to work within our zone of genius, getting into these flow states and doing the things that really get us excited and lit up and just on fire in all things that we do. Yet sometimes we get to that state and things feel so good. They feel like things are working just right. All of a sudden, these little voices, these little habits that we've previously had start to take effect. They start to influence us a little bit. In some cases, many cases, it sabotages us because it thinks this is too good. It can't last. So let's do something to end it. And this has happened a lot on the subconscious level. A lot of us just aren't even aware this is happening. Yet we find ourselves in these situations where we often make the same mistake over and over again. Things are going great in our business. All of a sudden we do something. We may say yes to something. And then all of a sudden that yes turns into like a big mistake. And we're like, well, I've already dealt with this kind of thing before. I knew better. But I did it anyways. These are the kind of things you want to start to be aware of. And I find that it's that desire for perfection that all keeps us locked in. So let go of perfection.
Yes, I agree. And I can say that because I am an A-type personality and I am a musician as well.
Oh
So,
man.
I've had
Yeah,
years and years and
totally.
years of that was ingrained inside of me.
Right.
I remember when I was, studying in graduate school with the director of the School of Music that I was attending, and I was doing a private study, and we were talking about perfectionism, and he says, well, if you weren't one before you came here, you will be by the time you leave, a perfectionist.
Right.
And I said,
Wow.
how do you deal with this in your regular life? Because it's not serving me. It might
Yeah.
serve me in the moment for what I'm doing in a performance, of constantly, really tuning in to what's happening moment by moment and improving it and perfecting all of this. But it's not really serving me overall in life. And then I began,
Mm.
teaching myself and all of the people that I was teaching, trying to help them, achieve high level of success, and perfectionism was holding them back. And the reason why I could recognize it so fast is because I struggled with it too.
Mm.
And so you begin to these things, you can detect it a lot faster and easier. And so over the years, I really had to be very purposeful at basically unlearning all of that was deeply ingrained in me from the time I was probably
Mm.
7 years old, of
Wow.
my first learning and deep learning, and years and years of lots of things where you are expected for perfection. And
Mm.
what doesn't help the situation is there's a lot of sayings out there that says practice makes perfect, and
Right.
I hate that saying with a passion, because practice does not make perfect.
Right.
Instead, I've had to be intentional of changing that, with each person saying practice makes progress.
Yes, I
And
like
here's
that.
my theory about
Yeah.
why perfectionism grabs a hold of us so much
Mm.
is we're constantly looking at the end result. And I've been seeing this, with myself
Mm.
as well, and really working on that in the last few months. As we're staring at the end result. We're not looking at the
Mm.
journey. We're ignoring the journey. And that's really doing ourselves a disservice, because it's the journey that helps us to get to our
Mm.
desired end result. And unless we are able to look at that journey, try to refine it, evaluate it, make some changes and adjustments when necessary, and find joy in it, because there's always going to be a journey, we're not
Yes.
really going to get closer to the end result. So
That's
I don't know. What are
I
your
like
thoughts about
that.
that?
Well, I like that well, it's not really a spin, but it's a philosophy, isn't it? I mean, it's really just a way of framing up our, our situation in our life and ultimately the motivations for why we do what we do. And I always like I'm always fascinated by certain Japanese philosophies. There's gosh, what's it called? Wabi sabi. Have you heard that term? Wabi sabi. Basically, it's like it's the view that there's beauty in imperfection,
Mm.
right? And this idea that the world is always changing. Buddha over 2,000 years ago, he said, I'm paraphrasing, of course. I mean, I don't know what exactly he said underneath that tree, but he got to the point basically just saying, the only real guarantee that we know to be absolutely certain in life is the fact that nothing stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is changing at all times, you
Yes.
know? And sort of going beyond that next step is this idea of wabi sabi, is the acceptance of the imperfection and seeing the beauty in it. And I think that is something to aspire to, right? Is being able to see everything for exactly what it is and recognizing right now I'm witnessing it as it is right now, but a minute from now, it'll be different and it changes. Everything's changing all the time. And just being present in the moment and being aware of that alone makes us appreciate the now a lot more as well. And this is where I always recommend entrepreneurs, if they don't already have a regular practice of mindful meditation, it'd be wonderful for them to start to implement that, because a lot of that is just creating
Mhm.
space in your life to become aware of some of your thought patterns, some of your actions, some of your feelings, but just being more aware and being more conscious of the decisions you're making and the actions you're taking, rather than just letting things happen automatically. You talked about the conditioning from 7 years old. Yeah, like think about that. All those years, all those recitals, all that practice. And then all of a sudden trying to rewire the brain to see things a little bit differently, to give yourself a little bit more grace, a little bit more leniency, to be not so challenging on yourself. It takes a long time. I think that's a big, big shift to
Mhm.
make.
Mhm.
So it is a different way of looking at the world. That's for sure.
Yes. Well, let's wrap up here. But before we do, I want to make sure that you can tell everyone your book. You said
Oh,
you have a book.
yes,
I'm
yes.
I'm a big reader, so I want to read this book.
Well, the
Definitely
book.
share what your book is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's called the Whole Life Fitness
Okay.
Manifesto, and it teaches people how to leverage 30 minutes, so 2% of every 24 hours, to improve and maximize your body, your mind, and your spirit. So it gives you a very, very specific lifestyle habit. I use the term program very loosely, because when you see it and you actually start to do it and experience the results, you realize this is not something you want to just stop, because it makes you feel good. You start to think a little bit differently. You start to see results manifest them in your life based on the actions you're taking for your own health and well-being. And it becomes something that you should maintain forever. It's a lifestyle. 15 minutes of movement with purpose, 5 minutes of mindful meditation, 10 minutes of personal development. It's 30 minutes, 2% of your day, but it goes into you first. And obviously, people ask me, is that all I got to do? And I'm like, no, but it's the minimum you're worth. It's the minimum you deserve. And yes, you do matter. Yes, you are enough. So, this question, am I enough? No, don't worry about that. You are enough right now. But this is a great way of putting more deposits into our well being, because those deposits over time provide a wonderful return on investment. You may not realize it now, maybe not 5 years from now, 20 or 30 years from now. Oh, yeah. You'll be very grateful that you took the time to put this investment into you. And so that's my book, and it's available Barnes and Noble, Chapters, Indigo in Canada, as well as Amazon.
Wonderful. And else can we find you? Can we find you on Pinterest?
Oh
I hope
yeah,
so.
just
People are
this
going
is
to
a
want
cool
to
thing.
follow
My
you on your
name.
boards.
Well, my name's
Just your
Dai
name?
Manuel. Dai Manuel. So it's such a unique name. I have all my social profiles is just my name. So I'm really easy to find. I have a blog with about 1,500 articles and resources to help people with maximizing life and all things in it. Basically help you smile a little bit more every day and feel a little bit better about it. And yeah, so reach out. I'm always happy to talk to anybody about this stuff. I love these conversations. I think it's upon all of us, because my life mission is to inspire 1 million role models to lead by example how to live their best life now. Because role models, not coaches. I want people that do it for themselves, and now just by living their life are now impacting others. 1 million role models can change the world. It's just amazing, and it's in all of us to do that.
Wonderful. We need to wrap up here, but definitely go check out the book. Definitely start following on Pinterest, the boards. That's where you can gather all of the information to get the latest blog posts, the latest news, the latest everything. If you want to take steps further and be able to prioritize yourself more in your own life so that you can have a better quality business and a better quality life, definitely do that right now. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing with everyone. I appreciate it
Thank
so
you.
much. I think everyone learned a ton today. If you did, definitely hit the like button. Write some comments down below. Ask questions if you want to, so that we can come around and answer those questions later. So don't be afraid to do that right now as well. And thank you so much. And have a wonderful rest of your day and your year. And definitely, invite you to come back again sometime as well.
Be wonderful. Thank you so much, Teresa, and thanks
You
for
bet.
everything that you do for entrepreneurs all around the world. It's really quite inspiring and motivating, and I've learned a lot from you already, and I'm looking forward to continuing to learn.
Wonderful. So go ahead and follow him, and then we'll see you around here again next time.